Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about growing avocado trees in containers, how to do it, and why it might actually not be such a good idea. Stay tuned, don't go away. Alright, so growing an avocado tree in a container can be done, but it's a little challenging after a certain amount of time. So let me explain. So if you bought an avocado tree, typically you'd buy it in a 3-gallon. In this case, this is a 2-gallon pot. Slightly smaller than the 3. I don't have a 3 to show you, but this is a 2-gallon. This is the one that I just took the tree out of to transplant into the 7-gallon fabric planter that I'm going to use, and we'll talk a little bit about this and why I'm using it. This is the one it came in. This is the 1-gallon container when I purchased a tree, and the tree is a grafted Russell avocado, which is a great avocado. I'll post a picture of what the fruit looks like. It's very impressive, very nice, very tasty fruit. So this is how I purchased it. I got it in the 1-gallon, took the tree from this size, actually it was busy, I waited about 2 months, so it was beginning to get a little root bound in this pot. That means the roots were circling, right? So what I did is I took it out of there, I put it into this pot, which is what I had at the moment, which is a 2-gallon. I put it in here, and then I just took it out today. I put it in here in August, so it was August 28th of 2021. It was doing well in here, not bad, like a little root bound. And I decided that, you know what, if I'm going to take it from here to here, let me try something. Let me get something to help the roots out so that the roots have better drainage. So I took a couple of handfuls of this stuff here, which is basically clay pebbles. These are used in hydroponics. So I took the clay pebbles and I mixed it really, really good with the potting soil. And then I got some 1868 time release fertilizer or 1768, something like that. And I put it in here around the roots, and the tree did fabulous, explosive growth, right? It got lush, it got beautiful. And then I said, well, let's check it out. Let's take a look at the roots. So I'm gonna show you what the roots look like right now, so you can see better how those roots look being taken out of that pot and put into this bag. Stay with me, you're gonna like this. All right, so you can see these roots. They're fabulous looking, they're healthy, they're doing terrific. Look at that, absolutely wonderful. So what I did is I just spread the roots out a little bit, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get more potting soil, and I'm gonna take more of these clay pebbles, and I'm gonna pour a lot of clay pebbles in there, a couple of handfuls, I shouldn't say a lot. We'll take a couple of these and we'll just sprinkle them around like this. We'll give it a little layer of these clay pebbles. All right, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little bit of fertilizer and just bring it in here. I'm gonna add a little bit of soil, a little bit more clay pebbles, and this will be planted. So when I come back, that'll be done, and then we'll talk about the tree. All right, so our Russell avocado has been planted in the bag, the fabric bag. We basically did a lasagna type of layering there with the clay pebbles and the potting soil, and the clay pebbles and the potting soil. So they were just layers of the two different mediums. And I have really found this for the last year or so with a lot of the plants to help them to really develop nicer root systems. It creates aeration in the soil, which is always a good thing to have nice aeration. Avocados are trees that do not like to be sitting in a wet spot or in places, but you do need them to dry out just a little bit from time to time to keep the trees healthy, and that's extremely important when you're dealing with container growing avocados. All right, so let's get back to the basics of the avocado tree and why I said originally that growing them in containers is probably not a good idea. Now, with that said, can it be done? Yes. Can you get them to fruit? Yes. Are you going to get a lot of fruit? Probably not. How many fruit have I gotten from the ones I've grown over the years in containers? 2 or 3 per tree. Maximum container size was about a 15-gallon. That was a Hass avocado several years ago, and I also grew a variety called Day avocado, which is a great little avocado similar to Hass. Actually does a little bit better in some respects than the Hass avocado, a little bit more productive. With respect to the reason again why we don't want to grow them in the containers is because ultimately you can do it, but you need to put a lot of work into it. I would say that every 4 to 6 months for sure, you have to go back in there, you have to clean it up a little bit, in other words, refreshen the soil, you might have to root prune quite a bit, and then that, is a constant, amount of work that you have to encounter just to get a few avocados maybe. So again, if you only want a couple of avocados and you don't have a lot of room and you'd love to grow one, you can absolutely do it, but remember, you need to consider, how do I keep that soil healthy? And the way to keep the soil healthy, what I've found is, you can mix in the clay pebbles, you can use a potting soil, not any kind of a regular soil like a garden soil. You want to use a potting soil. And even with that, you have to remember that some people recommend you mix sand in there and all that kind of stuff. I found that, look, if you use a good potting soil and you add the clay pebbles to it, or if you don't use the clay pebbles, that's okay, but you're going to have to freshen up that soil. That means at least twice a year minimum, you're going to have to repot it again in either the same pot or a slightly larger pot. You're going to need to make sure that you have fresh soil. I can't emphasize that enough. If they need a lot of water, yes and no, okay? It depends. If your soil happens to be drying out very quickly, then they're going to need a little bit more water. So they do like water, but they do not want to sit in the water. If you can remember that, you can pretty much handle growing it in a container. Also remember, the roots are going to circle in a container, so you're going to have to root prune the tree at least twice a year. Now, so what we have again is, we have it staked in a 7-gallon fabric bag. This is a fabric grow bag. It's got the layers of clay pebbles with the potting soil. I have a stake or a stick placed in it to keep the tree from, it's very windy. Lately it's been very windy, so I don't want these to fall over. Now, let's talk about the stake for a minute, about the stick that we're using. If you can avoid using the stick, avoid the stick. At some point you need to get the stick out of there, because that's my opinion, because what happens is that if you continually grow with the stick, sometimes you'll notice you take the stick off and your tree just flops over. It just literally, it just flops over because it's weak. It hasn't had any exercise, literally no exercise. What does that mean? That means that when it's growing in a small pot, you want it to continue growing without a stick. Train it early to not have to depend on the stick, okay? Now, if you have to use it, you have to use it, but eventually you do need to keep an eye on it. You don't want to have it always dependent on the crutch, right? The stick to keep it there. All right, so that's important that you keep that in mind. Fertilization, I find that the easiest way to fertilize the majority of my fruit trees is to use a product that is a time-release product. There's one that is manufactured by a company that I use. It's called Florican. It's fantastic. I do have some of those available on my website if you want to go ahead and check it out, peppysplants.com, and you can actually order. I have it on sale. It's a great bargain. I get you 2 nice bags of, I think that's the one I have now is time release 1778. Usually it's 1868, but the 1778 is also available and it works great. All right, so you want to make sure you have minerals in the soil, and one of the best things I found that works to keep your trees healthy is you can use Azomite. Now, you can also use a citrus nutritional spray, which is a liquid. You can use that as a foliar. You can mix that with water, and it has your basic iron, it has magnesium, and that you can spray on the tree as a foliar spray. A citrus nutritional spray works well with the fruit trees, okay? That is available pretty much anywhere you want to get it. You can get it at most garden centers. Citrus nutritional spray, great for your fruit trees. With respect to the Azomite is a powder, micronized powder, that this contains magnesium, calcium, potash, and a whole bunch of other smaller trace minerals. There is a label that's got all kinds of information on it, so I'm not able to show you that right now, but this is good stuff. You don't need a lot of it. What I do for these trees is, and when you do this, make sure you wear a dust mask. I'm not using one right now, but I'm going to be very careful. This is micronized, so it's finer than talcum powder. Very, very fine. You can see here, this dust goes everywhere. It's very, very tiny, micron sized, and it gets into the soil, and it really helps to produce, a healthy plant for you. So you can take a little handful, very little bit. Usually take a lot more than that, but like a full handful. But in this case, I don't want the dust in my face. So I'll take that and I'll just come around. I usually just go around the edges of the outside of the pot, and I'll just pour that in there like this, spread it out, and then I'll just cover it up. And like I said, I'll wear a dust mask to make sure that I'm not breathing. And then that we do all around there. and that pretty much gives it a great. Okay, there we go. Safety, wear a mask. Azomite. We're using the fabric bag. The benefit of the fabric bag is that that bag actually breathes really, really well. It dries out a lot sooner than a plastic container, and the roots do not tend to go around in a circle in these bags. They tend to grow out to the side, and they kind of touch the side of the bag, and then there's air as they come through the bag. The air actually prunes the roots, and you have a much healthier, stronger fruit tree. Okay, I'm going to show you another one. This is a tree that is not an avocado. This is a cashew tree. It's basically a cashew seedling, right? The same process. And I know a lot of people that have killed lots of cashews because they overwater them. This guy gets water like so much, and it's just not going to die. Watch, I'll show you what it looks like. All right, so look at this guy, right? Isn't that beautiful? Look at this. It's doubled in size. It's grown faster. It's super well rooted in here, okay? It's a gorgeous cashew plant. Look at that. It's absolutely beautiful, right? And cashews do not like a lot of water, okay? They do not like a lot of water. So again, to kind of illustrate, if you want to grow your plants and you happen to be growing them and in the containers, and you're in a place where it's always wet, always raining constantly all season long, like in Florida during the summer, it's always raining. Consider using these fabric bags. Consider using the clay pebbles. Make sure you're using a potting soil. And if you need to water, okay? Absolutely, they do need water. But what they don't need is constant saturation with water. That will kill your trees. All right, so let's just summarize a little bit of what we did here. Basically, we're using a fabric grow bag that has the benefit of aeration for the roots and keeping the roots from circling. It's fantastic to use these grow bags in the majority of cases where you're growing avocados in containers, and also some other fruit trees that do not like to be too wet all the time, and you want them to dry out. Okay, so that's where the benefit is of these fabric bags. The other thing that we talked about is using the clay pebbles. I showed you the clay pebbles. The clay pebbles is a nice thing to layer those pebbles with the potting soil. And remember to use potting soil, because if you use garden soil, it's not going to be as well drained, and that's important with avocado and mango, for example, and other fruit trees. We talked about the stick, and the purpose of the stick is to keep your plant in a high wind from snapping or something like that. In this particular case, I discussed that using a stick all the time is not good either, because you'll end up weakening the plant's ability to stand up on its own because it gets no exercise. So you want to kind of avoid the stick unless you absolutely have to, and at some point you want to remove the stick on the tree. Okay? The other thing we talked about is the fertilizer and the fertilization, which would be, if you're going to go organic, you can use organic products, of course, but I like to use a product that is called a time-released, encapsulated polymer fertilizer, and that's good stuff. It's excellent for all of the nutrition that the plant needs. I either use an 1868 when the plants are young. It's very important when the plants are young, you use a little more nitrogen, in some cases a lot more nitrogen, because you want to get the tree to grow. If you're using it on trees that are already established, you don't want to use something like a 1768 or an 1868. No, you want to use lower nitrogen, much lower nitrogen, okay? Maybe like a 666 in some cases is good enough, right? So you want to use low nitrogen when you're actually growing the tree to the size you want it to be approximately, to stop it from getting bigger and bigger, okay? If you give too much nitrogen, you're not going to get any fruit. It's just not going to happen. Or you'll get some, but you won't get much, okay? So easy on the nitrogen. Young trees, on the other hand, that you want to accelerate their growth, of course, you would use 1768, 1868, something like that, okay? The first number being the nitrogen, which causes leaf growth, and it gets the tree nice and big and lush, okay? Fast growth. With respect to the roots, if you're growing the plant in a pot and you plan on growing it like that for a long time, remember you're not going to get a lot of fruit. You're going to get a few fruit from the tree, and you run the risk that if you do not repot the tree, either in a larger container or in the same container with a nice root pruning, okay, you're going to end up with circling roots and soil that is already depleted and very, very nasty, okay? No ability to hold water, but worse than that, by that time, it's probably created root rot and your tree starts to decline. Some of the symptoms of root rot or the potential to get through the root rot, or overwatering I should say, is when your leaves start getting yellow and you have less and less leaves and you're losing your leaves. You know, by that time you need to go ahead and you need to start paying attention, because you might lose the tree if you don't take action. What's the action? Okay, I'm going to post a video up here that talks about the avocado tree that's in a pot, that's too wet, losing its leaves and having a big problem and probably going to die. And if that video, you watch that video, you're going to be able to see how we're able to save a tree that's growing in a container that's got root rot. Okay? All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video. He gave you some tips, some basic tips. If you have any questions, any comments, please go ahead and leave them below. I'll do my best to answer them. And if you don't mind, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We'll do everything we can to bring you more information on growing fruit trees. Thanks, everybody.